Key to the Inside, a podcast by Corey Johnson-Levitt. By interviewing leaders from all branches of government, our podcast will provide insight and an up-close perspective into state and national government.
Okay, welcome to the third edition of A Key to the Inside. I'm Ron Corey with Corey Johnson-Levitt, and we're excited to host Congressman John Moolenaar from the 4th Congressional District here in Michigan and learn about what is going on in Washington, D.C., and how the environment over there is affecting us here in Michigan, but most of all, how it's affecting our clients as well. Congressman, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. All right, let's get started. Way back in 1990, we first met each other while we were both working for a statewide candidate. And both of us were basically drivers and handlers for this specific candidate. I got to ask you, did you know then that someday you would go from being a local official in Midland to the state legislature to the U.S. halls of Congress? I mean, going from a degree, chemistry degree in Hope, to a member of the powerful House Appropriations Committee is pretty impressive.
Well, I kind of got involved in politics late compared to a lot of people, but I had started off working as a chemist. You kind of do what you grow up learning, and my hometown in Midland was the home of Dow Chemical, and it wasn't until Bill Schuette really got involved in politics that I started following it, and I was in my 20s at that point, and it turned out I lost my first election, and fortunately was able to then come back and serve at the local level and then the state level, now the federal level. But in these campaigns, you just never know what the future is going to bring. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve and to be able to help people.
President Biden has been using this $1 trillion figure a couple of times now since his inauguration. The latest one being a $4 trillion spending proposal designed to redistribute the wealth in our nation, as he put it. Given your position on the Appropriations Committee, where do you see this proposal going? Or better yet, what may it look like at the end of the day?
Well, the president campaigned as someone who was going to bring people together and work in a bipartisan way. And clearly he's not doing that. This spending policies are really going to endanger our financial health as a country. And, it's one thing to spend money on things that are needed and, wise spending, but when you start opening the door to these massive $1 trillion bills that, in the case of the last COVID bill, less than 10% of it was actually related to COVID. It was other political priorities on the agenda, and the same thing is happening now with the infrastructure proposal, where less than 10% of that is actually going to roads, bridges, and things that we would consider infrastructure. And so I think that's where there's a breakdown. That's why he's not getting bipartisan support. He could, if he focused on the key priorities, whether it's, helping us navigate the pandemic and reopening our economy and getting kids back in school. And if it's building roads, bridges, runways for airports, even rural broadband or, access to the internet, I think all of those have bipartisan support. Unfortunately, the Green New Deal getting thrown into the mix as part of infrastructure just isn't going to fly with Republicans, and it's unfortunate that he's going down that track.
Yes, $1 trillion seems to be becoming the common phrase now. Obviously, here in Michigan, we know we have a shortage of skilled trade workers, and we have a definite need for improvement on roads, bridges, closer to home for you, sewers, and dams. Do you see some type of infrastructure project or proposal coming out, or that's palatable for a 50-50 split in basically both chambers?
Well, the Republicans have come out with a proposal in the Senate that would be more of a I think it's more in the $600 billion range rather than $2 trillion. And what's interesting about that is the Democratic $2 trillion proposal only has about 115 billion dedicated to roads, bridges, things that we would consider infrastructure. The Republican proposal actually more than doubles the funding that would go to roads and bridges and costs about a quarter of it. So to me, that would make a lot more sense. It'd be much more bipartisan. Look, we have infrastructure needs. I was actually with the governor this morning in Clare, where their MDOT is working on, improving 127, kind of the gateway to the north. And, those are areas where there is bipartisan support for these kinds of investments and improvements. Unfortunately, in Washington, there's such a political agenda, the wish list from the progressive movement, that it's getting very hard to discern actually where the infrastructure is in the infrastructure bill.
Yeah, I guess what is the definition of infrastructure now is becoming a common question.
Right, right.
Yeah. Well, specifically on infrastructure, I know you've had a couple conversations back with President Trump, I'm sorry, face to face, regarding a very important infrastructure project here in Michigan, which is the SULOCs. Have you been able to have same conversation or same positive movement with this administration as the last?
Well, I have not, unfortunately, and it's pretty clear to me from the President Biden's budget proposal, he cuts $1 billion from the Army Corps of Engineers, and so I'm going to be pushing back on that, because ultimately the Army Corps who's working on keeping the Asian carp out of the Great Lakes, trying to help our navigable waters and work on water levels in the lakes. The SULOCs, we're working our way through, building this new lock, which was started this past year, and we really need to fully fund that effort. It was something that, as you point out, we talked with the President Trump about. He understood it immediately, because you have the iron ore coming from the upper Midwest that's used for manufacturing of cars, appliances, and it's a 100-year-old infrastructure, and if it ever were to go down, the Homeland Security report said it would be the Achilles heel of the North American industrial economy. Not just Michigan, not just the Midwest, but the North American industrial economy. So to me, that's a huge priority. It was Governor Snyder's top priority. I know it has bipartisan support within our delegation. Unfortunately, we've got to get President Biden on board embracing this in order to keep it going forward.
Yeah, we got a little bit of world news on that when the Suez Canal was blocked, and I can only imagine what happened if we lost locks at any particular time.
Right.
I want to jump to another area that's very important to everybody, obviously, is what's going on today. I mean, you do sit on the Appropriations Subcommittee for Health and Human Services. As a country, we've been very vigilant in our preparation for an infinite number of scenarios that could pop up at any time to defend our country in a military way. Given what we've all been going through with this COVID and disease, and how it's affecting every bit of our life, is Congress or federal departments working together on kind of aggressively figuring out, let's not let this happen again? How do we prepare ourselves for it? How do we make sure if it does happen, we get in front of it?
Well, that's a great question. And, you use the military example. And unfortunately, even the military would say often we find ourselves fighting the last war rather than thinking ahead and anticipating what the needs are in the future. And clearly, this global pandemic, it's something that Congress had actually been preparing for with the strategic national stockpile and different investments in research. I think one of the great successes in the last year has been Operation Warp Speed, which was, the combination of public and private working together to develop in record speed these vaccines that we're now using. So I think there certainly is the capacity. One of the things we've learned, though, is you also have to have the supply chain that can support drugs and medicines, and that really benefits Michigan. The more of the supply chain that we can bring back and manufacture in Michigan here in the United States, to me, that adds to our global security and preparation for, I think all of us were scrambling when we'd hear that, whether it was personal protective equipment or medicines, that, we didn't want to rely on China. we'd rather be relying on our own manufacturers and be prepared going forward. So I think that will be a big part of the discussion with our subcommittee and in Congress in general.
Yeah, we've learned we weren't prepared for something. It definitely cost us twice as much going forward. I'm going to shift over to, I know another subject that's been near and dear to your heart way back when you were in the state legislature, and that was refugees. I know you've been heading up the Chaldean end of the refugee issues, but nationally, with our borders that we share with Mexico and others, basically Central America, where are we on letting in or letting out or taking care of these people as they do come in?
Well, I think it's important, Ron, and you know this as well as anyone, that America is a place that welcomes people from all over the world, and to come here legally, to participate in life here in America. And we want people who want to live the American dream, and that's always been our heritage. Unfortunately, as you point out, at the border right now, we have a lot of illegal activity. And it is a crisis point right now. I think President Biden sent the wrong message right from the start that basically said we're not going to enforce border security, and led people to believe that it was just time to come. And so the caravans started almost immediately. Now, I will say that the Trump administration had secured agreements with Mexico as well as the Northern Triangle countries of Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, to figure out ways to help those local economies and also stem the flow of illegal immigration. Because what it does is creates an entire illegal, the cartels, the human traffickers find ways to prey on people's intentions of trying to enter this country. And I think that President Biden sent the wrong message. I think he's trying to recover from that. He's placed Kamala Harris in charge of that. Unfortunately, she still hasn't visited the border. And I think we really need to secure the border, send the message out that this is a welcoming country, but we're going to have people here who go through the legal process rather than the illegal process. And he's got a lot of backtracking to do on this, and unfortunately it's creating a lot of problems at the border.
Yeah, I think we've all learned America is a welcoming country if you want to be here and do things the right way. We've definitely shown that and proven that, myself being an advocate and a victim of that at the same time. So, but no, I know a lot of people appreciate those efforts that you've been putting forth with the Middle Eastern area of our globe, and allowing some of these more of these refugees to come in.
Well, I'll tell you, the Chaldean community in particular, you mentioned, has contributed so much to Michigan and to our country. And it's both the social fabric as well as the economic engine that, a lot of entrepreneurs and people who come to this country and really want to participate in a way that is right in line with the vision of our founders in this country. And to me, when I think of your heritage and what you've shared with me, this is something where we want to have America, our diversity as a strength in that area. My grandfather came from the Netherlands, and so he worked as a migrant farmer and until he finally saved up enough money to buy a farm in Indiana. And he never went past the 6th grade in school, but he was a hard worker, and he made the way for us to participate in this wonderful country as well.
There's a lot of great stories out there for all of us. Let me ask you, what are you working on? What's Congressman Moolenaar doing, keeping busy, other than defending the good faith and conservatism? What else are you working on?
Well, one particular area I've worked on that I think is really important to Michigan is rural broadband. I think all of us through the pandemic have seen, whether it's children who need to be educated, and in some of the parts of my district, you have kids going to their high school parking lot so they can access the internet, do their homework. When you think of telemedicine, all the advances that are taking place, I've worked on some legislation called the Boost Act that would make As we're building out fiber throughout our state, in the short term, there's a need for immediate access that's going to take some time before we have the fiber entirely built out. And so it's a proposal that kind of makes it more accessible. It doesn't pick winners and losers, but allows people to have a bit of a tax credit that would offset some of the costs of accessing wireless technologies, and again, recognizing that in the long term, we're building out, and that's important to do.
I would hope you would have bipartisan support on this effort.
We do. In fact, one of my co-leads on it is Jimmy Panetta from California, who is on the Ways and Means Committee. Sanford Bishop, who chairs our Agriculture Subcommittee, is also a co-sponsor, and we're lining up, our Michigan delegation, as well as people across the country who have seen the need for this. And I think all of us benefit when we have a strong infrastructure of internet.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think showing people that we can work together is definitely good news for back home. I know we got a couple more minutes, but I want to throw out some quick questions you can give short answers on, and we'll see how creative we can come up with some answers here. So since you've been in Congress, I know you've been on numerous different committees. Which committee did you enjoy, or have you enjoyed the most?
I'll tell you, I'm on the Appropriations Committee, and I am on the Agriculture Subcommittee, which is vital to Michigan. It also oversees the FDA, and then the Labor, Health, Education Subcommittee, which involves a lot of the different programs that we've talked about. But in the midst of this pandemic, having oversight of the NIH, the CDC, the research going on, as well as the FDA, it's really given me a chance to see the important work, whether it's Operation Warp Speed or the different agencies that are stepping up and trying to help address this problem. It's been a fascinating time to be part of it.
I would imagine appropriations has lends itself to a lot of good stories and a lot of good projects. So, on that, then, who have you enjoyed working with the most?
I enjoy working in our Michigan delegation. We've got good people to work with. On my health subcommittee, Tom Cole from Oklahoma has been a mentor. He's one of these sort of longtime statesmen that is just a pleasure to be around. A lot of times Congress gets a bad name because there's some bad actors. But in general, most of the people that I've worked with in my time, whether it was in the state legislature or in Congress, are people who are trying to do good things for their state or their country, their district. And it's really been fascinating to see the backgrounds of people, from people with medical backgrounds, military backgrounds, agriculture. Everybody has a unique skill set that they bring to the equation, and you're able to learn from people based on their prior experience.
What's the hardest part?
Well, I think the travel, and it's definitely where you're connecting in your hometown, your home community with your family, but then also trying to connect at the seat of government, and sometimes you feel like you've got a foot in both worlds. And so with the pandemic, it's definitely made it less of a, Congress is where you congregate, right? Well, the buildings have been shut down due to COVID, and then some of the security issues. And so it's taken some of the joy of being around people, seeing the student groups that come and visit the Capitol, seeing families, going there on tour. That's taken some of the joy out of that, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to normal as quickly as possible, and for families to be able to enjoy our nation's capital once again.
We hope so. We hope so. I think we've all learned, even here at our state capitol, collaboration in the hallways does lend itself to some good ideas or good strategies. And
Sure.
It's a shame that a lot of us haven't been able to do some of that like we used to in the past. But so when you have downtime, I know you have 6 kids. I think if I remember correctly, they're kind of scattered all over America. But
Yeah.
what's your favorite thing to do?
Well, we spend a lot of time trying to catch up with each of the kids, and now we are grandparents, so we have 2 grandchildren. I love being outside. This time of year in Michigan, you just cannot beat the opportunities, and I have a district that we get to enjoy a lot of the unique aspects of Michigan. I used to love playing basketball. I haven't done that in a long time. I'm turning 60 this year, so I'm probably not doing as many activities as I used to do. I'm still doing the congressional baseball game, though. And so we're looking forward to doing that in September.
Perfect. Books or music, which do you prefer?
I enjoy reading. It's something where I enjoy music too. I find that I still think back to some of the best books that I've read, and one of my favorites is Team of Rivals, about Abraham Lincoln and his leadership. And I often think about just the qualities that made him a great leader, and that book in particular focused a lot on his leadership, but it's also a great history of the Civil War and also America during that era. And so whenever I can combine sort of an interest in history as well as something that reads almost like a novel, to me, that's a win-win.
Well, that's a great man to read about. Well, Congressman, again, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know we don't see each other often enough, but thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing, for your service. You have a wonderful staff that have been fantastic to work with. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Well, thanks. Appreciate being on the podcast with you, Rod. This is my first one with you. And I'm thinking with the pandemic, that's probably given you a lot of creativity to try some new things that like to see that.
We're always trying. We always have to be ahead of the game like everybody else. So, but John, thank you. Bless your family now, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ron. Take care.
Thank you for joining A Key to the Inside, the KJL podcast.